liftflation is a serious problem threatening the ecosystem of the lifting community. Now, this comes on the back of many different developments within the strength and physique side of YouTube fitness and Instagram. For example, one of my loose friends, Gavin Aiden, he posted about how you need to squat way more than people think for it to be impressive now.
Okay, I have a question for people who lift weights. What is the minimum squat for it to be impressive, both male, female? For me, personally, I think like impressive minimum squat would have to be like 672, 650 maybe. I think minimum. 500, I think strong. But impressive, for me to be like, okay, this person trains. 650, 672.
And then there was even a lifter named Dylan Johnson, who I found on Instagram recently, who's 18 years old, squatting 733 pounds at 187 foot-pounds body weight.
Once you wake up, it's just a dream.
Final example is Austin Perkins at 161 pounds, squatting 752 pounds. This is the most impressive lift ever done. Unbelievable. Now, the interesting thing is there's a bit of a paradox when it comes to whether physiques are more popular or strength numbers are more popular, in that the more saturated one side gets, the more distancing it becomes from the elites to the average person, or even a very good, athlete, becomes pushed away from that specialization, which ironically then makes it pretty immediately less popular. The data's already starting to support this. 2025 was the first downturn year in powerlifting since COVID, and it went down enough to where the past 3 years has actually now been slightly negative. And most interestingly, the youngest age group is the most affected, with almost a 15% drop off in the teenage range. That is going to be very important for the future of powerlifting, and in my opinion, is driven by liftflation, because this is despite the fact that we've seen more world records this past year than ever before. So it is a very interesting effect, because I've had my YouTube channel since 2012, since way back in the day. I actually had a YouTube channel even before that, posting squats since I was 15, 16 years old. So I've seen a lot, and it is very interesting because I remember when the Hodge twins came onto the scene. It was the Hodge twins, Matt Ogus, and then 3DMJ, who were kind of like these natural physiques that looked phenomenal, and everybody just wanted to do it. And then very soon after that, you saw Jeff Side, some of the Gymshark guys, that I'm not going to say anything.
I'm not going to say what race, what people, doctor, and what hospital, and what media went to. We know I can't say that.
They looked a little bit more suspicious. They had the 3D doubts, okay? And I think then you immediately saw this pushing away to where people are like, okay, well, I'm not going to be, that. But then I can lift some heavy ass weights maybe. And then that's where I kind of came in, and that's where the strength wave took off. Now, what was interesting though, is I do remember a time during that period where people would say, hey, I bench 225 for 6 reps. Like, how come my physique doesn't look that good, yet I'm pretty damn strong? And I always found that kind of funny, because it's like, well, a 225 for 6 bench just isn't that strong. And that's no shade. The whole point of this video is to be proud of your accomplishments. But I do think a lot of people don't realize that, if you bench 225, even for 8 to 12 reps, a lot of times that's on a physique that's just, pretty good, but not amazing. And I think one of the big distortions is a lot of people, if they took a video of the top 5 physiques at their local gym, no diddy, it would look a lot worse on video on Instagram compared to the rest of Instagram versus what you imagine in your head. Because when you see someone in person, they just look way more impressive, naturally, due to that aura that you experience. So anyways, what's interesting though is I think we have had this shift to where I would actually say with physiques, we've had people overpost on how, hey, I've been lifting for 15 years and my physique sucks. Like, give this post traffic. And then people will comment, oh, I'd kill myself if I looked like that after 15 years. Like, we've seen all those types of viral posts on TikTok and on Instagram Reels because there was so much of this black pilling that then people are like, wait a second, you can actually look very impressive. I mean, look at myself on this video of bench, getting ready for it. I mean, I'm literally 5'7", 215 to 220 right now. And I know I need to cut, but, I have a sizable amount of muscle mass, way more than I ever have before. And I'm actually pretty confident that after I cut down, 40 whole pounds, I think my physique in some ways will stand out almost more than my lifts at this point in the game, because the scales have shifted so much the other way. And that's what's very interesting is we are at a point of peak liftflation to where it is unsustainable. And one of the issues with why it's so unsustainable is because we're also going to have an issue in the future where if a powerlifter peaks around 8 years, 10 years into the sport, right now they're still hitting world records from 22 years old to then 23, 24, 25, 26, guys like Jesus Oliveras or Austin Perkins or Joe Borenstein. What's going to happen the next generation where then for Joe Borenstein to hit a world record, it's got to be when he's 30. So he's going to go all those same years. You could have the exact same replica of the career plus 5 kilograms, and it's going to take so much longer to hit an actual world record when the sport's more saturated with so much less incentive and rewards along that journey that I don't know if it's going to even be sustainable. So I think we're going to have very big issues when it comes to the top of the sport, but that's why we shouldn't even care about it to some extent. So actually my advice is on that ground level is how do we think about our own lifting journey? And I think first, what we need to do is lift with pound plates. They look cooler. It matters that it looks cool. Benching 315 is sick. Benching 314 pounds because you're using kilogram plates and that converts over to pounds in 314 rather than a clean 315. Nobody wants to do all that. That doesn't look cool. Having 2 reds and a yellow and some other garbage. No, that doesn't look cool. Don't do it. Make it look cool, make it fun. Secondly, I'm going to say something maybe controversial, is if you do feel like these lifters you're following are blowing your mind to a point where you're like, with the Dylan Johnson example, squatting that much at 18, just being like, I don't even understand how these guys are doing it. If that does bother you, unfollow them. I know that sounds gay, but just do it. All that matters is how you feel about your own training. And it ultimately, you don't have to suck up to these famous powerlifters. And it is actually interesting because you definitely realize you're not really missing out on much. Like, trust me, I have interviewed a lot of top lifters. I know of a lot of top lifters. I know of basically all top coaches. It ain't that deep. I mean, I honestly do think a lot of it's genetics, consistency, financial incentive, and then I do think, I'll talk about in a different video, possibility of drug use, I definitely think has to be considered even more strongly than I have in the past. Because, some of this inflation is getting insane. But that being said, the main point is that, very rarely do you pick up on something that you really wouldn't have figured out otherwise. And if it is bothering you at all, and I mean really at all, if you don't identify, like I am the strongest person in almost every gym I ever go to, and especially if I stayed in Ohio. In Texas, it can be a little different because the strongest lifter in the world is in my city and sometimes goes to my gym. But if I was staying in Ohio, I'd be the strongest lifter ever in my city at my body weight that I would ever know, literally ever see. And it's funny how when you're online, it's almost like I'm just known as like the brainy guy who makes creative videos or the guy who does his research before a video, rather than being like, I'm a genetic freak. I am the strongest person that would ever be in Cincinnati or in the Cincinnati area. Like, there is just something actually unhealthy about that, though. Is like, we should identify with our local group first. And all that internet stuff ultimately can be, like I said, unhealthy. It could be, it could just be irrelevant. And I think that that's what we're seeing a trend across the world today, is we're seeing, liftflation is very similar to regular inflation in that it also interacts with the global economy. And I think a lot of people used to have the mindset of, hey, if I'm going to get a job in computer science, I should be better than everybody from India or from China and have to earn that through a pure meritocracy. And I think we're seeing more and more that just doesn't lead to a happy world. We just go, yeah, that sucks. I get it, but that sucks. And that benefits companies and not us. And we were never meant to actually have that type of tribal disconnection from our local group. So I think we need to reclaim our local group. We need to reclaim local hierarchies, reclaim pride in benching 315, squatting 500 pounds, squatting 550 especially. I'd say 550 is probably right at that, great mark. And deadlifting 600, 650 is still amazing. And that should absolutely be your focus. And if it's not amazing, you should have someone locally to you to be stronger than you to then go, okay, it's not amazing because Billy over there is lifting more than me. That's valid. Whereas if it's not amazing because Austin Perkins somewhere is doing a set of 6 with it, that doesn't matter. He's not near you. He doesn't know who you are. He doesn't care about you. So therefore, you shouldn't care about what he's doing. It's that simple. And this connects back to a video where I mentioned about how, in my opinion, some people are prematurely doing hybrid training or running from lifting heavy because when they were lifting heavy, they were so focused on that global community. And I do think it can be an unfortunate thing. I mean, if you could deadlift 600 pounds and you're no longer deadlifting at all because you don't want to be compared to people who deadlift 850 pounds at your weight class, I mean, what a shame that is. Whereas if you were just compared to your local community, you would maybe be doing it for 30 years and loving it. And I do think, even that's a little bit of a reminder to myself. It's like, okay, let's not neglect our gifts that we have that are God-given just because it's 1 out of 10,000 instead of 1 out of 10 million who have this ability. And I do think that is a real problem and obviously drives a lot of anxiety and insecurity in a lot of people because we aren't naturally being compared to who we're around. And I think we can overcome that manually and just say, look, I just care about this and I'm going to be integrated into real life in a real third place with people who actually matter to me. And it is amazing because I do think that's what we miss about the old days of lifting in college and you're with your boys and you're the strongest person on the football team or you're one of the strongest point guards playing basketball or strongest on the track team. A lot of these nice memories we have, even if you're not the strongest but you're up there or you're the hardest working, it is because we have a tight-knit group and that's all that matters and we're not thinking about so much that is ultimately not thinking about us. And that's the key, is to be properly self-centered when it comes to something that is ultimately a fun pursuit and one that you cannot lose by prioritizing what you can actually touch and see and feel in real life. I do want to mention that shirts are available now. I've now re-upped them being available, and I will have actually new shirts coming in about 2 weeks or so. So both these are available, Think Deep, Squat Deeper, and the original right now. And then secondly, the Candido Forever program right now is on sale at $14.99. So if you do want to up your strength game, and again, it's for yourself with pound plates. I don't want to see you using kilogram plates. I don't want to see you comparing to other lifters. I want to see you take pride in your own lifts. The way to combat liftflation is that we have to prioritize what is actually in front of us. If you bench 315, it is cool. It doesn't matter that someone who's 163 pounds in Japan can bench 494 under competition IPF circumstances with his elbow depth reaching below. It's like, none of that matters. All that matters is that you're getting strong as hell. That looks cool as hell. That looks sick. You're loading up 3 plates. Hell yeah, you're a dang real man, okay? Firm handshake. All right, see you guys next video.